This is the Low Capacity Leader Podcast. I'm Pastor Chris Kilgore. I pastor the Fair Forest Church of God in Spartanburg, South Carolina.
I'm Pastor Amber. I'm the associate pastor here.
And we appreciate you joining us.
Enjoy.
Enjoy. Hey, watching or listening, whoever you are, wherever you are, whenever you are, I'm calling this the Low Capacity Leader Podcast. And I guess even podcast is a weird name because it's just us talking. But as a leader, I've spent years reading leadership books, and so many times they elevate high capacity leaders, people who can do a ton of things at one time, who have all of this ability to juggle multiple things in a large organization. And I've always felt lost in that. So I guess I wanted to call it this because I do like one thing at a time. That's it. I hope to do it well, but I do one thing at a time. And I'll probably never lead an enormous organization, but that doesn't mean that what I'm doing is not important. And I will want people to understand that if you don't feel like that's you, that doesn't mean that you're less important. And some of these conversations are really flowing out of a place that I feel like is a place of limitation. Specifically for Fair Forest Church of God, for our church, I want people to hear what I didn't get to say on Sunday, despite the fact that I said a whole lot of things on Sundays. And so this kind of what gave this thing birth is just being able to not feel the pressure to say everything on Sunday morning because I got that one shot, but to have a conversation about some of the things that we did not get to or that I did not say, or things that maybe needed more exploration, or things you can open it up and let it breathe a little bit more. So just doing this each week as a low capacity leader because I don't know how to shrink 70 minutes of content into a 35-minute neatly packaged sermon. I'm a low-capacity leader. I'm proud of it, and I'm okay with that. Amber wants you to know that she is not low capacity, that she's very capable of doing a ton of things all at one time, and praise God for that. But at some point, I just want to make that clear. So that's why we're here. We're here to talk through what wasn't said on Sunday and then open things up for what was said on Sunday. Absolutely. Even and hopefully bring a little more to the table and talk about other things too, whatever else comes up. So that's where we're at. So we were in Genesis chapter 12 on Sunday, and we have been for a long time now. So we started talking through Abraham's life last year, and through seasons and cycles, we're still in chapter 12. And so talked about a few things yesterday. This is actually Tuesday, so 2 days ago. Yeah. But it was really the completion of a longer sermon about faith and falling down. So Abram leaves Haran, goes to Canaan, and then there's a famine in Canaan, and you read about that in verse 10 of chapter 12, and that sort of spurs this first testing. So Abram has come to the place of promise. He's built some altars. He's declared the name of the Lord. Seems like things are going well, and then the first test hits, and it's like Abram loses it. He can't continue doing exactly what he's supposed to do, so he ends up going to Egypt. This is the first time he's going to go to Egypt, and so that's sort of what got us where we were. So I wanted to talk about the idea that there's still a journey of faith even when we fall. When our faith fails, that doesn't mean the journey is done, because I believe God's testing creates this really beautiful, textured sort of storyline where God understands that there's going to be those moments where we stumble, but those moments are moments of learning. Yeah. The tests of God, I've said this before, but the tests of God, never said it on here because this is the first time we've done this. First time. So I've said it in other places. The tests of God for his children are not pass-fail, they're diagnostic. When James 1 talks about count it all joy when you go through tests and trials of various kinds, what he's not saying is, hey, thank God we get to find out if we fail for good. He's saying that when God brings or allows tests into our lives, it's always diagnostic. It's always something that is revealing to us where we are, where we're supposed to be, and it's building out of our life something that we could not have outside of those tests. And I think Søren Kierkegaard had talked in a book called Fear and Trembling about this idea that Abraham could never have been the kind of man who would sacrifice Isaac in chapter 22 if he wasn't the kind of man who was tested in Genesis 12. Yeah. So without the testing, without failing and finding out who he actually was, which again does not eliminate him from God's promise, it actually reveals how am I supposed to be developed and formed by God so that when the moment of true crucible shows up, I'm capable of walking in places where I couldn't have walked before. So that was sort of the big picture idea of how I approach this passage in Genesis 12, 10 through 20, and then 13:1. And so I don't want to put you on the spot, but you're high capacity, so I want to understand your thoughts on that whole thing as we move forward.
I do think like something I actually just thought of that I didn't have tabbed in my brain was that when we're talking about Abraham and the development of that, like the character, it's like God weeding out the things that doesn't belong, in falling down. That way, as he's developing us, not only in stature and walking with him, but in character with him to produce his character in us. And I think that's really important to understand in failure, that even when you do fall, good character can develop.
Absolutely.
So
100%. And I think that goes to the assurance of salvation. Yeah. I think the calling of God, it must be tested. And but it also is a very secure place.
Yeah.
And part of what I said in some of this idea was that there's no safer place to fall than in the presence of Jesus.
Yeah.
And leaning on Luke 7, and the woman comes in as a sinner, and the verb there in the Greek in Luke 7 is not that she used to be a sinner and now she was righteous and she just found Jesus, but that she was a sinner when she walked into that place. Falls down at his feet, breaks open the ointment, washes his feet with her hair, weeps over him. And it's that idea that Jesus looks at her and says, yeah, this is exactly what I want. When you falling in the presence of Jesus will always be safer than falling outside of the presence of Christ.
Yeah.
And I think that's where sometimes, and to press a little bit on some of our tradition, it has been stated too frequently that it's easy to lose this idea of grace, to lose what God has done in our life. And I just don't believe that. I believe that when God calls a person, rescues a person, saves a person, forgives a person, that then the goal is formation. And formation always includes discipline. It includes cleaning up somebody who has fallen down. It includes celebrating them when they've been victorious. All of those are part of that cycle. And so I think if we lose sight of that cycle, then what happens is the first time we trip and fall, or the first time we make a mistake, suddenly it's like God has no patience for us, that he loved us more when we were a sinner than he did when we were a son. Yeah. And that doesn't make any sense at all. I think part of this passage really structurally from a zoomed out view has to be there. Yeah. God's not upset with Abram. God is teaching and developing and forming Abram.
How to develop him. Because I've even there's been moments when I haven't always done as I should. When I fell, it was almost like I felt like I had to, oh, God's forgiven me. I can't walk back in that gifting yet. I have to have this time period before I can walk in that gifting, when he's like, I literally gifted this with you. Why would you have to wait to walk in this gifting if you're now walking with me again? Yeah. And so I do think it's a mindset of how you're taught in the church. And
100%.
I think with Abraham, because he goes back to Egypt again, it's really a zoom of God's grace and how he develops us throughout, but he never takes away the promise or the gifts that he's given into our lives.
Yeah, I even this morning I was thinking a little bit, I think there's, once we're in God's presence, in that forgiven, saved, called way, transformed way, I think at some point, if we are still afraid of what might happen at the end, then we're going to miss the beauty of walking in the formation in the middle. And so what I think is so crucial is I can't be afraid of the end once God has called me.
Yeah.
I should be more afraid of missing the future that he's calling me to than trying to avoid the future that I once was doomed to. Yeah. And until that shift takes place, I think we're always walking on eggshells instead of kneeling before him in worship. And those are not the same things. You can figure out how not to do wrong, but that's not what formation is. Yeah. Formation is how can I adopt the position and posture of Christ? How can I become like Jesus so that what I'm doing is right? I want to be more consumed with doing right than not doing wrong. And I think that's where in Genesis 12, in the second half of the chapter, again, God brings Abram all the way back to the place of promise, leaves the door open, even though Abram walks away. And it seems that God never creates this moment where he's like, no, you can't come back in here. This covenant that God has made with Abram is secure. And I think that's a beautiful thing. So he can come back.
Absolutely.
I can keep talking. Talking is not my problem.
I love how Sunday, since we're recapping Sunday, and we're really just recapping this whole little area here, you talked about home and because how you said that he came back to, the land of promise. So he's coming back home. And you had given a quote. Am I jumping too far?
No, you're good. You're good.
Yeah, given a quote by Robert Frost that said, "Home is the place where when you have to go there, they have to take you in." And I know that we had talked about it, but a lot of people might not understand that statement because home to people is different for a lot. Like you have somebody who grew up in a home with, doors that go both ways.
Absolutely.
And then you have people who did not grow up in that type of atmosphere. So to learn God in that manner of home, that you can always go back to the promise, that's a mindset in itself.
Absolutely.
Really.
So there was something that Friday or Saturday, I was working through a book called Three Pieces of Glass. So I didn't mention this this is one of those things. This is one of the reasons why we're here. One of the things that I would have said had I not already preached 50 minutes is something that had come up. Like I said, it was Friday or Saturday in a book by Eric Jacobson called Three Pieces of Glass. He's talking about belonging throughout the course of that book. And he's talking about ultimately the title, which is really unique. He says that there are three pieces of glass that are keeping us in our modern culture from actually walking in belonging, walking in purpose. And that's cell phones, televisions, and windshields. These are all things either of distraction or separation. And one of the things he got into, though, that was a really unique discussion was on the difference between place and space. And that was maybe on Friday that I saw this. I'd actually got a little bit of this down because I wanted to remember it. And he said, you can visualize the relationship between space and place by thinking of a college dorm room. Before a student moves in, and my daughter's going to college in just a couple of weeks, which is really frustrating to even think about. But that room, we actually visited that room. And so there's nothing in it. It's just the beds and the shelves and the closet space. And so it's empty. It's not decorated. And they've spent the last 2 or 3 weeks, and through the generosity of people at the church and friends and family, like they have this bizarre virtual housewarming. Yeah, thank you very much. Everybody who's given, thank you so much. It's saved us a ton of money, and we get to eat. And but all of these items are going to then become the difference between it being a space and a place. Yeah. So a room is a space. It becomes a place when we move in.
Yeah.
And so like a home can be a space because it's walls and it's people and it's an address. It doesn't become a place until the things that make it unique are actually inhabiting it.
Yeah.
And I think that idea that when God called Abram to Canaan and then Abram leaves Canaan, what he's coming back to is not just another area. It's the place where promise was made. It's the place connected to covenant. And so I love that idea that becomes home. Even if he leaves, it's still home. Mm-hmm. And even if he feels like I've fumbled the ball here and I shouldn't have reclassified my wife and I shouldn't have given Pharaoh this woman, I should have protected her instead of using her to protect me. God still leaves this door open and he says, I've still prepared this space for you. Yeah. Like, this is not just land. This is your home. This is what I've called you to. And I do think making sure that as Christians, as believers, as followers of Christ, and I think I mentioned it on Sunday, but like Jesus doesn't say, I'm going to prepare a space for you. He doesn't say, I'm just going to make sure there's some real estate in the afterlife for you. Like you've got some good farmland that you can develop and you can build your own house. He says, I'm like, in my Father's house, there are many rooms, and I'm going to prepare a place. There's already space. I'm going to prepare a place, which means I'm readying this place for your entry into it because my promise creates not just an area to inhabit, but a home to live in. Mm-hmm. And I love the way that Genesis 12 brings that same idea that Abram, and it's really in 13:1, he comes back into the Negeb, into the place of famine, but it's into the place of home, out of the foreign land and back into the place that he was called to. And I'll finish that out. Jacobson said, space often is used to express a freedom from or a potential for something. Mm-hmm. Give me some space. Like I just need to be separated from what's going on. But place describes a realm where something significant has happened or is happening. And that's why we would say, the old expression, there's no place like home. Yeah. And I do think the Frost quote points to that idea that home has nothing to do with walls and doors. Home has everything to do with the preparation of when I need to be received, I'm received.
Yeah.
And that can be at a coffee shop, that can be at a church, that can be at an address, because that's what people do to create, or that's what the Heavenly Father does to create an area where this is not like it was.
Yeah.
You don't have to feel like you're separated or orphaned or distant. And I think that was so much of the thrust of where I wanted to end on Sunday was not just, okay, there's a place you come back to, but there's a place that God has created and prepared and has meticulously ordered for you to come back to, because he cares that you find a place of belonging.
Yeah.
And no matter what your life has looked like, again, and to go back, so if the testing is just God testing to develop and not God testing to eliminate or kick out or orphan, then suddenly home is not the place that we have to be qualified to go back to. Home just has to be the place that has been prepared for us to return to. And I think that's such a beautiful safety net. If grace is not a safety net, then grace is a farce. Like, it is of no use to me.
Yeah.
If the favor of God is something I have to be perfect to maintain access to, then it's not really grace and it's not really mercy.
Yeah, that's true. I hadn't thought of two movies while you were talking.
Oh boy.
I know. But no, you said there's no place like home. Like, to give the ideas, there's no place like home. Like, you got Wizard of Oz, and she's clicking her little red heels or whatever, because she longed to go back to that place because she knew it was safe. She knew that was like a home. And then I thought of Jenny off of Forrest Gump, which is my favorite line. And she says, "Dear God, make me a bird so I can fly far, far away." Like, that's what she prayed to escape her home.
Yeah, yeah.
And so if we ever find ourselves praying, "Dear God, make me a bird so I can fly far, far away from home of the Lord," then we're seeing him in the wrong aspect.
100%.
You know, so, but if we can find ourselves like, there's no place like home, if we're saying that and we're understanding there's no place like home in him, then we've got it's clicked. But if we're trying to flee from the promise, then maybe it's not clicking the way that it needs to click, you know?
And he's not a pushover, but
yes.
But I also think there's such theologically, biblically, there's such an important move that is made in Genesis 12, because when you go back to Genesis 3, when sin enters the world, Adam and Eve hide. They both hide themselves and they cover themselves to separate themselves. And then God says, like, you can't come back in this space.
Yeah.
Like, this is not yours anymore. And what I think is so beautiful is that when he makes this covenant promise to Abram in Genesis 12, 1, 2, and 3, everything shifts, because now, even though Abram has left the place that he was supposed to be, God says there's no angel with a fiery sword hanging out at the entrance to Canaan. You get to come back in. And so what happens is the covenant of God creates this access, because God is already envisioning Christ.
Yeah.
He's already knowing that what the covenant made with Abram, and in Galatians 3:16, the covenant made with Abram is going to be fulfilled in Abram's offspring, which is Jesus.
Yes.
And so the idea is that because the promise was made, the door was never going to be closed again. And so in Egypt, back in Canaan, you go into Exodus, they're in Egypt, they get to come back into Canaan. Like, God says, I'm never closing a door like I had to in Eden again, because the promise I've made to you is that there is a way and there is a truth and there is a life, and that one is going to lead you to me again, and you will always have access to me.
Yes.
And so I think it's such a beautiful balance point that the promises that God makes to his people, it doesn't always create perfection, and it certainly does not create people who never make mistakes. What it does is it means that we will never be without a home to come back to, because he's left that door open through the work of Jesus Christ.
Yes, and I think that's the most important thing to understand as a child of God, you know.
And as people.
Yes.
So I think, if our formation is crucial and we want to be like Christ, then that means that I not only celebrate and thank God that I can come back after I stumble, but that means I've got to create environments in my own life where that also is possible.
Yes.
So that means that I've got to treat my own life and my church and my home and my time, my attention. If I'm going to be like Jesus, then that means I'm creating a world where people who don't have to be perfect in order to find a place with me. In order for me to treat them like they belong. Because again, if perfection becomes the standard for people in my life to feel like they have access to me or my love or my favor or my whatever it is, it better be love and favor, because I don't have a lot of money, so I can't give them a lot of money, but I can give them love and favor. Then if perfection has to be the standard, then suddenly I've elevated my own doorways much higher and much more secure than God even has. And that's obviously not the way that this works.
No.
And so
The same amount of grace that was given to you should absolutely be shown to others
100%.
by you,
100%.
Like, I mean, I might hold myself up to a standard up here, but I try to, like I've learned as I've gotten older, I would think of different things that happened when I was a teenager and the adults that were in my life at that time. And when I've hit that age that they were, I've thought, this is where my brain is at this age. And this is what they were doing when I was 15.
Yeah.
And it gave me a way to see them with a different sight of grace. Like, I would need a whole lot of grace if I was going through what they were going through at this age. And so, when grace is given to you, we should offer up grace and not just, grace was given to me, so I'm going to take it and run.
Yeah. It is interesting. And I think as adults, the way that I saw adults when I was 12 or 16 or in my childhood, adolescence, I just figured adults had answers. Like there was some book that they had access to. It's like, we know what to do.
Yeah, no.
And then you grow up and you realize, like, I don't have a clue what
Where's
I'm doing.
the adult
I have
in
no
the room?
idea.
Why is it me?
Where's the book that they were reading from to know what to do? And I think it is like as generationally as we cycle, I think we figure out that all of this is really a moment to moment. There are these tests. What do I do here? What do I do here? What do I do? And thank God that there are some people who look at us and say, yeah, it's okay. You're probably going to make some wrong decisions. That doesn't mean that we're going to separate. That means that you're going to have some lessons that you learn, and you're going to pass those lessons down. And I'm always going to be here to receive you again.
And that's home.
Yes,
that's what home is to be.
And I know that there, we typically understand orphans as children. Again, because then we put the burden on adults to be, well, you just got to figure out and make your home.
No.
I just think that there are tons of people in their 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s who are still searching for that place of belonging. And so like when I ended Sunday, I read this long story, and it's from a book by Philip Yancey, who wrote back in the 90s. And it was a retelling of The Prodigal Son about a girl from Traverse City, Michigan, and she went to Detroit, got in a bunch of mess, and she didn't know if she could come home.
Yeah.
And so she ends up coming home, and the whole story is, beautiful to me. But at the end, like her family's at the train at the bus station, and I'm looking out at these people, and I'm having a hard time telling the story. Every time I do it, it's very difficult.
I cried the whole time.
Yeah, but I mean, all through the room, like people are sniffling and snorting and wiping their eyes, and it's not because the story's emotional. I'm convinced it's because the story plucks one of those heartstrings that I don't always know if I've got a place to go.
Yeah.
And that is terrifying.
Yeah.
And I think that is what Genesis 12 directly confronts. It says, in collision, it says, when you've gone to the wrong place, God says, now you can come back home. Yeah. Like that door's open. You can cross back over into that place that I called you to, into that place of promise. And I think that's just beautiful. Like that's what this is supposed to do.
But it's hard to grasp that too.
Sure.
So like as somebody who has not understood that home has a swinging door, and I know I said that, but a revolving door, like it's hard to grasp that the Lord God of creation, Abba Father, also has a revolving door, because I didn't grow up like that. Like I didn't grow up knowing that I had a place to call home. I grew up being shifted from home to home, wondering where I would be the next day. Or if I did something wrong, am I going to have to move out? If I did, like who am I living with next? Like if I said the wrong thing or didn't have the house a certain way, So when you grow up like that, you like literally, because you start viewing God the way you view people,
Absolutely.
Well, if people are like this, then how it's hard to see God any other way.
Yep.
So it's really learning him and understanding that home, and that's probably why it does pull heartstrings, because when you, like the Lord has done a lot of healing in my life, but when you haven't opened up certain doors or been vulnerable in certain places, and you hear stories like that that these parents just welcomed her in and had a party, I was sitting there thinking, what in the crud? Like it would have been a door open, now you're grounded, I'm not even going to ask questions of what you did, and it's just, and even though the Lord's healed and done a lot of things, it's hard to it's like you see the beauty and you want to grab a hold of that beauty, but you're always wondering, like, is this legit?
Yeah.
Or am I
Yeah.
going to be like, dear God, make me a bird so I can fly?
Yeah.
I mean that, like, and so I think that's why it does tug, because there are so many adults whose inner child has not been healed.
Sure.
And so I was thankful to hear that story in a new light, understanding that, God has that door and he is home. But I think there's healing, because that's what started this whole series off was you started Abraham, but then with Father's Day, you went into the orphan spirit.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think that this just flowed right into it, because Abraham was a sojourner, right? And he's having to travel and do all the things. And you got later on with Hagar and Ishmael and doing the stuff that he is being told too, So it's just an interesting take, because there are so many adults that need that healing, that need to know that Abba says, hey, I'm throwing you a party when you come home, just like the prodigal son,
Well, wounds always get protected and they rarely get extended.
Yeah.
Like when you're hurt, you protect, you don't extend. Mm-hmm. And it is one of the most beautiful stories to me in the New Testament because of that reality. That the man in the temple with the withered hand that Jesus heals, he says, you've got to extend your hand. It's been preached on over and over again, so there's nothing new about that. But I think it is the counterintuitive nature of saying, I'm going to extend the thing that I have taken all this time protecting.
Yeah.
I've spent my entire life hiding it, keeping it tucked away, not letting it be the center of attention. And now this healer comes along and tells me the way this works is you're going to have to extend it.
That's scary.
Yes, it is. And I think what is so I talked a little bit on Sunday, but we have a new dog, and so that dog is trying to get accustomed to the house and to us. And first 3 days full, skittish. Dog's super skittish. And even when you would try and hand it a treat, like when she first came to the house with her previous owner, he came in, and so we were in there. She was huddled. She was just very nervous, looking around, darting her eyes. And so I had a treat, like peanut butter. I mean, that smell should draw all humans unto it, but and dogs as well. But when I held it out, like the idea was she could sniff it, but she's like, I don't know that I can trust that hand.
Yeah.
And she would not extend her trust regardless of the good thing that was in front of her. Mm-hmm. It took her time. And what it took was continually reaching, continually saying, this is still here for you. I'm not pulling this back from you. I'm not ever going to take this away. This is it's not a hook, it's a hand.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to lure you in so I can snag you and get you here. I'm extending myself before you because I know the good thing that you need. And I think that the patience and the glorious grace of God is that he continues extending. He continues leaving the door open because he knows that what has been wounded, it must at some point be extended or it's never going to take hold of the treasure. And that becomes the beauty of the story. God says, I'm not pulling this back. I'm not pulling the rug out from underneath you, no matter how long it takes.
Yeah.
Like if we believe that God was committed to our formation, regardless of how long each step took, I don't think we would be nearly as skittish about allowing him our trust. But we have to feel out those waters.
Yeah.
Nobody trusts quickly. That's not what trust is. And thankfully God doesn't care how long it takes. God says, if we're making progress, that's all that matters to me. Yeah. And I love that part of how he deals with Abram and how he deals with us. I mean, that is the way of things. The disciples do a lot of dumb things. Jesus is constantly patient with them. Peter denies him. Jesus comes to the shoreline. Like this is Paul persecutes, imprisons, maybe even kills Christians. God says, yeah, I'll meet you on the road. It's okay. I'm still here. I'm still doing this thing. Like that kind of God. The world, my doubts, fear, it has no answer for the authentic character of God as he actually presents himself. And that's why it's so crucial for us to present him that way. So I could go on. This is probably way too long. I don't know. Where are we at, Isaiah?
32.
Okay, that's okay. 30 is not bad.
That's good.
Pastor Isaiah is behind the camera. He is on the other side of that screen. So thank you so much for running this. And so there's so much more that we could talk about, but we won't. I'm good. We might even divide this into two. And
it's crazy. It's a podcast. It can be long.
I don't think it needs to be long. I think it needs to be bite-sized. So to keep people coming back. I want to hold out the treat. I want them to feel like they can come back without being held hostage
They
by
will extend
40
their
or
hand.
50 minutes. We'll see. We'll see over time. I'm a low-capacity leader. She is not. Thank you for watching, listening, however you're receiving this. And we want to do this for Fair Forest because I want you guys to hear not just a sermon. I want you to hear the heart behind all of this and the
Yeah.
conversations we have during the week and after Sunday. But also if there are leaders who just need to be nourished, I hope that some of that nourishes you. As a leader, you don't have to feel like you're an orphan too.
Yeah, and that's true. And let's extend this for a second, because I think a lot of pastors, they have a harder time extending. They have a harder time, like, I'm going to protect this wound and I'm going to be vulnerable. Like us three had talked about that Sunday morning, of being vulnerable in front of your flock, in front of your congregation, in front of the people that you pastor. And so, but with the Lord, we can always be vulnerable as leaders, high or low capacity, or medium, maybe. Like we can.
Medium capacity.
Yeah, medium capacity. We can always be. Mine is really just ADHD capacity, probably. So it's everywhere. But we always have a home.
Yeah.
Even leaders have a home with the Lord.
Yeah.
And can be vulnerable with Him. So
it is important.
yeah.
You spend a lot of time in church trying to create spaces and moments and experiences and just that people will enjoy, that they will be changed by. You spend a lot of time trying to create those spaces and those things.
And covering and protecting them.
Absolutely.
And you're not always protected.
A lot of times it feels like you're bearing the brunt of that. And so, like leaders have a home too.
Yes.
People who are covering others, they have a home too. Like that, we're not orphans just because we are called to cover or lead. We are absolutely welcomed into the Father's house. And I think that's where, I'll hush at this point, but in Luke 15, the one prodigal comes home because he's been walking in the far country. The other one struggles to come back home because he's been working the fields.
Yeah.
And I think that for me has become such a powerful image that maybe it's easier to come back into the Father's house when you've been in sin than when you feel like you've been the shepherd. Like when you've been in the fields, it becomes so difficult to let go, because you feel like you're the one holding it all together. The truth is you're not. I'm not. Like we're not. And and if God can't hold it together, then we can't.
Yeah.
We might operate under that illusion for a while, but that will never be the authentic truth.
Yeah.
And I think the sooner we can lay that burden down, the sooner we actually find that there's a house for us, that there's a home for us. There's not just space that we can get to, but there's a place that's prepared for us in His presence. And so I think it nourishes people. I think it keeps some leaders walking another year when they were ready to give up in that season.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
that's important. So, well, thank you. I'll cut it off there. And
We play Simon now.
we can play Simon if you want to. She wanted to play Simon as a way to start this thing. It just seemed like a bad idea. I don't know. It still seems like a bad idea. But it's okay. We'll figure that out. I guess if we need to play Simon Says, then we will.
Not Simon Says. Bop it. That one. Isn't that what that is?
Low Capacity Leader Podcast.